what are your thoughts on these softwares like TaxBit and others that help with forms? Because I've always had trouble with, like, if you've got a brokerage account and, even with traditional equities, trying to upload those into TurboTax or send those to your CPA, especially the TurboTax route, can be very frustrating.
Yeah.
Now, whenever I go in there, I'm reporting like my basis and my, gains for say, crypto or Bitcoin or some other digital asset, it gets so complex so fast. And I'm mostly a hodler, right? I've only, made a few sell transactions. It's mostly buy transactions. So it's not like I'm not like a day trader. I've got thousands of transactions.
Yeah.
But the ones that I do have were frustrating. And so have you had any feedback on the softwares that like TaxBit that I think they track your basis and your gains across wallets, if I'm not mistaken?
They can, and some, depending on how sophisticated they are, can actually analyze the blockchain itself and give you information. And that's important for some people because if you do most of your trades on an exchange, they're getting better about reporting those and having the information available to you.
But they don't
print it.
Unfortunately,
but they do not upload.
Yeah.
So you have to print it out and sit there on yourself and type, right? Your own data entry. But if you have had cryptocurrency for a long time, before the exchanges were kind of as sophisticated as they are, or had the money or personnel in order to keep track of that kind of stuff, sometimes you may have old cryptocurrency that figuring out your basis is impossible without an analysis of the blockchain itself.
Wow. Yeah.
Unless you wrote it down. And so I think for those software programs, they're vital to people who especially have been in the space for a very long time. Because without them, I don't know that you can accurately do it. And the IRS's answer, if you can't, clearly point to what your basis is you can use any reasonable method. And that's a very broad thing.
Yeah.
And what you might consider reasonable may not be reasonable to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so being able to use kind of a mass marketed one, and most of those, I know some of the people at TaxBit and other things like that, right? They have professional accountants and other people who design that in order to kind of give you some backup for the method that you're using in order to calculate what your basis is and then what your gain is and then report it. But definitely those softwares, especially the sophisticated ones that can analyze the blockchain, for the people who I had one client who inherited a USB of cryptocurrency that from his father who had bought it years and years ago, and all it had was the keys, but not really a whole lot more information.
So he has no idea.
And without being able to analyze the blockchain, it'd be impossible for him to decide what it is. And what he owes.
I guess you could go to a company like Chainalysis and say,
yeah,
hey, what's the history of this?
Yep. And they do the same, right? Yeah. But right, there will be a market for it as more people get into the space. And it's nice to see that some of these software companies are now deciding that there's enough of a market for them to do it. And so as the market grows, the sophistication of those products will also, I think, go up.
Do you have any go-to where you have a client come to you and say, hey, I'm doing this. I have these questions, this question. Oh, by the way, I need to get a software because you're probably helping them on their stuff that's sort of in the past. And they're also asking you, hey, moving forward, how should I do this? Do you recommend any sort of software?
Usually I end up referring them to accountants who work in the space because I don't do the accounting work. But usually what I'll do is I'll explain to them, hey, listen, here's what you need to be able to figure out your basis. The IRS determines it to be a reasonable method. Here are a couple of the reasonable methods that they use. There are software programs out there. And if your current CPA isn't aware of them, I can usually give them the names of those software programs that they can use. But or refer them. Sometimes people just need an accountant that works in the space. And we're starting to see also more accountants who are making a significant portion of their practice digital assets. All of the accountants that I know can kind of functionally work their way through it. But if you end up with something truly complicated, you probably need to find a specialist in that.